I was working the front desk at a hostel in Prague when an American guy walked up to me and said, "Excuse me, do you speak English?" I said yes. He looked relieved. Then he asked, "Okay, cool. So can you tell these people to stop speaking Czech so loud? It's really rude when they know we're trying to have a conversation." I just stared at him. We were in the Czech Republic, in Prague, the capital, where Czech is the official language. I told him that, and he goes, "Yeah, but everyone here knows English, right? So they should just use it when Americans are around. It's just common courtesy." Another guy in Amsterdam told my friend he was disappointed that the Anne Frank house didn't have better English signage. My friend was confused because the entire museum is in English and Dutch. The guy explained, "Yeah, but the Dutch parts shouldn't even be there. It's an international museum. Why would they put Dutch in it?" My friend said, "Because we're in the Netherlands?" And the guy responded, "Yeah, but Anne Frank wrote in English, didn't she?" She didn't. She wrote in Dutch. The published diary was translated. I had a co-worker in Barcelona who worked at a tapas restaurant. An American couple sat down and she handed them the menu. It was in Spanish and Catalan, with small English descriptions underneath. The woman looked at it and said, "Do you have this in normal?" My co-worker asked what she meant. The woman tapped the menu. "Normal, English, the regular version." My co-worker just brought out the English menu they keep for tourists. But she told me later she couldn't believe someone called Spanish not normal while sitting in Spain. There was a guy in Paris who got frustrated at a train station because the announcement was in French first, then English. He complained to the staff that it was inefficient. "Why do they say it in French first when most people here speak English anyway?" The staff member said, "Most people here speak French, sir. We are in France." He said, "Yeah, but statistically, more people in the world speak English, so it should come first." That's not how train stations work. One time in Tokyo, I watched an American family get upset because a small ramen shop didn't have an English menu. The dad kept saying, "But Tokyo is a major city. How do they expect tourists to eat here?" His wife suggested they just point at pictures. And he said, "That's ridiculous. They should just provide English. We're paying customers." They left. The shop had been there for 40 years. They were doing fine. These stories sound wild, but they happen all the time. I've collected dozens of them from friends, co-workers, and people online. And honestly, the more I hear, the more I realize it's not just about language. It's about this assumption that the whole world runs on American terms. So let me walk you through some of the wildest, funniest, and most facepalm-worthy moments I've come across. I used to work at a tourist information center in Vienna. One afternoon, an American woman came in holding a crumpled printout of a museum listing. She asked me, "Why is everything here in German?" I said, "Because we're in Austria. People here speak German." She frowned. "Okay, but I'm a tourist. Shouldn't it be in English for me?" I explained that most museums have English audio guides and brochures. She wasn't satisfied. "But the signs on the street are in German. How am I supposed to read them?" I suggested using a translation app. She said apps were inconvenient and that the city should just make things easier for visitors. She then asked if I could personally translate every street sign she'd encounter. I politely declined. A friend of mine worked at a hotel in Lisbon. An American guest called the front desk at 11 at night, frustrated. He said, "I'm trying to ask this taxi driver to take me somewhere, but he doesn't understand me." My friend asked if the guest spoke Portuguese. He said no. She asked if the driver spoke English. He said, "A little, but not enough." So my friend offered to translate over the phone. The guest said, "No, I just think it's crazy that taxi drivers here don't speak better English. What if there's an emergency?" My friend said, "Then you call the police, and they speak English." He hung up, annoyed. There's a cafe in Brussels my cousin manages. It's a small local spot. The menu is in French and Flemish. One day, an American guy came in and asked, "Do you have a menu I can actually read?" My cousin handed him the English section they keep behind the counter. The guy looked at it and said, "Why isn't this the main menu?" My cousin said, "Because most of our customers are Belgian." The guy replied, "Yeah, but English is the universal language. You'd probably get more business if you just used it as your default." The cafe has been packed every morning for 20 years. They're doing fine. A woman in Munich told me about an American tourist who got upset at a bakery because the employee didn't understand his order. He kept repeating, "Pretzel. I want a pretzel. Pretzel." But he was pointing at a croissant. The employee tried to clarify, showing him the actual pretzels. He got frustrated and said, "Why don't you people just learn English properly?" The employee spoke 4 languages. English was her third. My friend worked a summer in Krakow at a walking tour company. An American tourist asked her, "Do you guys teach Polish people English in school?" She said, "Yes, it's a mandatory subject." He seemed surprised. "Then why doesn't everyone here speak it fluently?" She explained that learning a language in school doesn't mean you're fluent, especially if you don't use it every day. He said, "Well, they should practice more. It would make traveling way easier for us." She didn't know how to respond to that. I met a guy in Rome who told me he tried to order coffee at a tiny neighborhood cafe, but the old woman behind the counter didn't speak English. He got annoyed and said, "How do you run a business in 2024 without speaking English?" His friend pointed out that the cafe was in a residential area with mostly locals. He said, "Still, it's Rome. Tourists come here." The cafe had been run by the same family for 3 generations. They weren't struggling. A co-worker in Athens told me about an American who complained that the Acropolis had too many Greek tour groups. She said, "I came all this way, and I can barely hear the English guide because these Greek groups are so loud." My co-worker said, "It's a Greek historical site, in Greece." The woman replied, "Yeah, but it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so it belongs to everyone. They should limit the Greek tours so international visitors can enjoy it." That's not how heritage sites work. Someone I know in Copenhagen worked at a bike rental shop. An American customer got frustrated because the instruction sheet was in Danish on one side, English on the other. He said, "Why is Danish even here? Just make it English." She said, "Because we're in Denmark, and Danish people also rent bikes." He said, "Yeah, but how many Danish people really need instructions? They already know how to bike." She just handed him the bike. Another friend in Reykjavik told me an American tourist asked why all the signs in the Blue Lagoon were in Icelandic first. She said, "Because it's in Iceland." He replied, "But most of your tourists are foreign. You should prioritize them." She said, "We prioritize our own language in our own country." He called that not very customer-friendly. It's one of the most visited sites in Iceland. They're fine. I was in a Facebook group for expats, and someone posted a rant about how their neighborhood in Madrid had too much Spanish. They said it made them feel isolated and that locals should make more effort to include English speakers. Someone replied, "You moved to Spain. Why would they change their language for you?" The original poster said, "Because it's polite." I worked at a bookstore in Edinburgh. An American tourist came up to me and asked where the British history section was. I pointed to the UK history shelf. She looked confused. "No, I mean British, like England." I said Scotland is part of Britain. She said, "Wait, Scotland is a real place. I thought it was just in Brave." I showed her a map. She was genuinely surprised. A guy at a train station in Brussels asked me, "What language do they speak in Belgium?" I said, 3 official languages, Dutch, French, and German. He blinked. "That's weird. Why don't they just pick one?" I explained that Belgium has different linguistic regions. He said, "That sounds super complicated. Have they thought about just switching to English?" No, they haven't. My cousin worked at a museum in Dublin. An American visitor asked him, "So is Ireland part of England or the UK?" My cousin, very patiently, explained that the Republic of Ireland is an independent country. The visitor said, "Oh, then why do you guys speak English?" My cousin said, "Complicated history." The visitor replied, "Yeah, but, wouldn't it make more sense to speak Irish?" My cousin said, "Some of us do. It's one of our official languages." The visitor looked amazed. "Wait, there's an Irish language?" "Yes, there is." A friend in Amsterdam told me about an American who asked her why the Netherlands was called Holland. She explained that Holland is just a region, not the whole country. He said, "So why does everyone call it Holland?" She said, "Because people mix it up." He nodded slowly, then asked, "So is Amsterdam in Holland or the Netherlands?" She said both, technically. He looked even more confused. Someone in Stockholm told me a tourist asked them, "Is Sweden the one with the Alps or the fjords?" They said, "That's Switzerland and Norway." The tourist said, "Wait, those are different countries." They showed him a map. He said, "Okay, but they're all connected, right? So it's kind of the same thing?" "Not really, no." A woman in Prague told me an American asked her, "Do you use the euro here?" She said yes. He replied, "Oh, cool, so you're part of Germany?" She said, "No, the Czech Republic is its own country." He said, "But you're in Europe and you use euros, so doesn't that mean you're all the same?" She tried to explain the EU. He still didn't get it. I saw a TikTok from someone in Vienna where an American asked, "Is this where Hitler was from?" The local said yes, he was born in Austria. The American said, "Wait, I thought Hitler was German." The local explained he was Austrian but led Germany. The American said, "That's confusing. Why isn't that in the history books?" It is. In every history book, a guy in Budapest asked my friend, "What country are we in again?" My friend said Hungary. He said, "Oh right, is that part of Russia?" My friend said no, Hungary is independent. He said, "But you guys were part of the Soviet Union, right? So doesn't Russia still kind of control things here?" My friend explained that the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. He said, "Oh, I didn't know that." I worked with someone in Krakow who told me an American tourist asked, "Is Poland considered Eastern Europe or Western Europe?" She said, "Central Europe, technically." He said, "But it's near Russia, right? So it's Eastern." She said geography is more complicated than proximity. He said, "I just feel like Poland sounds Eastern." That's not how geography works. A friend in Copenhagen said an American asked her, "Is Denmark the one with the Vikings?" She said yes, historically. He said, "Cool. Are there still Vikings here?" She said no. That was over 1,000 years ago. He looked disappointed. Not even for tourists? There are museums, but no active Vikings. Someone in Dubrovnik told me an American asked, "Is this where Game of Thrones was real?" She said, "No, it was filmed here, but it's a fictional show." He said, "Yeah, but the history is real, right? Like the kingdoms and stuff?" She said, "No, it's fantasy." He said, "But it's based on real events, isn't it?" She just said, "Sure," and walked away. A co-worker in Athens told me a tourist asked, "Is the Parthenon the one from 300? She said, "No, that's Sparta." He said, "Wait, Sparta is a real place?" She said, "Yes." He said, "I thought it was just a movie. It's ancient Greek history." My friend in Berlin told me someone asked him, "Is this East Berlin or West Berlin?" He said the wall came down in 1989. The tourist said, "Yeah, but can you tell which side we're on?" My friend said, "There's no side anymore. It's one city." The tourist said, "But isn't there still a vibe?" "Sure, but not a border." A guy in Reykjavik asked my friend, "Do people actually live here year-round?" She said yes, about 130,000 people in the city. He said, "But how? It's so cold." She said, "Icelanders have heating." He said, "Yeah, but don't you guys want to move somewhere warmer?" "No, they like it there." Someone in Helsinki asked a local, "Is this where Santa lives?" The local said, "That's more of a Lapland tourism thing." The American said, "So he's not real?" The local said, "Not literally, no." The American looked crushed. I didn't know how to feel about that one. I was at a grocery store in Germany when I watched an American try to check out. He put his items on the belt and just stood there. The cashier scanned everything fast, as they do in Germany. The guy didn't bag anything. The cashier told him the total. He paid. Then he stood there, staring at his groceries in a pile. The cashier stared back. The line grew. Finally, the guy said, "Are you going to bag this?" The cashier said, "No, you bag it yourself." He looked horrified. "What kind of store makes customers bag their own groceries?" She said, "This kind, and you're blocking the line." He scrambled to bag everything while complaining the whole time. A friend in Sweden told me about an American who got upset because stores closed at 6 p.m. He said, "How is anyone supposed to shop after work?" She explained that Swedes usually shop earlier or on weekends. He said, "But what if I need something at 8 p.m.? She said, "You plan ahead." He said, "That's so inconvenient." Most Swedes manage fine. My cousin worked at a train station in Switzerland. An American asked, "Why is this train so expensive?" She explained that Swiss trains are punctual, clean, and efficient. He said, "Yeah, but in the US, flights are cheaper." She said, "Then fly." He said, "But I want to take the train. It should just be cheaper." It's not. I was in France when an American asked someone, "Why do shops close for lunch?" The local explained it's common in smaller towns for a midday break. The American said, "But that's when people want to shop. It's bad business." The local said, "We've been doing this for generations." The American said, "Doesn't mean it's efficient. France's small businesses are doing fine." A guy in Italy asked my friend, "Why don't restaurants open for dinner at 5 p.m.? My friend said, "Because Italians eat later. Dinner starts around 8. He said, "That's ridiculous. I'm hungry at 5. My friend said, "Then eat at a cafe." He said, "But I want real food." My friend said, "So wait until 8. He didn't want to. Someone in Spain told me an American complained that siestas were inconvenient. He said, "Why does everything close in the afternoon?" She explained that it's hot and people rest during peak heat. He said, "But I'm a tourist. I don't need a siesta." She said, "Then go to a museum. They stay open." He still complained. A co-worker in Norway told me about an American who was shocked by the price of beer. He said, $8 for one beer? That's robbery." She explained that Norway has high taxes on alcohol. He said, "That's insane. How do people afford to drink?" She said, "They budget for it." He said, "In America, beer is like $2. She said, "Then drink in America." A friend in the Netherlands told me an American got confused about bike lanes. He kept walking in them and cyclists yelled at him. He said, "Why are these bike lanes in the middle of everything?" She said, "Because bikes are the main form of transport here." He said, "But they're in the way." She said, "You're in the way. That's their lane." He moved. Someone in Denmark told me a tourist asked, "Why do I have to pay to use the bathroom?" She explained that public restrooms cost money to maintain. He said, "But in the US, bathrooms are free." She said, "Here, you pay." He said, "That's a scam." It's not. It keeps them clean. I was in Austria when an American asked why tipping wasn't expected. A local explained that service workers earn fair wages. The American said, "But how do they know if they did a good job?" The local said, "By being professional." The American said, "In the US, tips motivate people." The local said, "Here, fair wages motivate people. Different systems." My friend in Belgium told me an American got upset because a restaurant wouldn't split the bill 12 ways. The server said they could split it 2 or 3 ways max. The American said, "But we all ordered separately." The server said, "Then you figure it out." The American said, "This is terrible service." The restaurant was packed. They didn't care. A guy in Portugal asked my friend, "Why don't places take credit cards?" My friend said most places do. He said, "But this small cafe didn't." My friend said, "Some small places prefer cash." He said, "That's outdated. It's 2024. The cafe was 80 years old." They were fine. Someone in Finland told me an American complained about quiet hours. He said, "Why can't I vacuum at 10 p.m.? His neighbor explained that quiet hours are from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. He said, "But I just got home from dinner." The neighbor said, "Vacuum earlier." He said, "That's so restrictive. Everyone else follows the rule fine." A co-worker in Greece told me an American was surprised restaurants didn't bring the check automatically. He said, "Why do I have to ask for it?" She explained that in Greece, you're not rushed out. You ask when you're ready. He said, "But I've been sitting here for 10 minutes. She said, "That's normal. Just ask." He thought it was rude. A friend in Ireland told me an American asked, "Why don't you guys have ice in your drinks?" The bartender said, "We do, if you ask." The American said, "But it should just come with it." The bartender said, "Not here. Different norms." Someone in Poland told me a tourist asked, "Why does everyone take their shoes off indoors?" She explained it's a sign of respect and cleanliness. He said, "But my shoes are clean." She said, "It's still the rule here." He said, "In America, we keep our shoes on." She said, "You're not in America." I was in a cafe in Prague, finishing some work, when an American couple sat down next to me. They ordered coffee. When it arrived, the guy looked at his cup and said, "This is tiny. Is this a kid's size?" The barista said, "No, that's an espresso." He said, "But I ordered a coffee." She said, "Yes, espresso is coffee here." He looked at his girlfriend. "Do they not have normal coffee in Europe?" She shrugged. He asked the barista, "Can I get a large coffee? Like American size?" The barista said, "We have Americano." He said, "No, I want regular coffee." She made him an Americano. He took a sip and said, "This tastes watered down." She said, "That's what Americano is." He said, "Why is it called that?" She said, "Because Americans wanted weaker coffee during World War II." He looked offended. "That's not true." She just walked away. I sat there thinking about all these stories I've collected over the years. The train station complaints, the menu demands, the geography mix-ups, the why don't they just speak English moments. And here's the thing. Most of these people aren't trying to be rude. They're just genuinely confused. They've grown up in a place where English is default, where stores are open late, where coffee is huge and refills are free. So when they travel, they expect the same. And when it's not, they don't understand why. But that's the whole point of traveling, right? To see that the world doesn't run on one set of rules. That different places have different systems, languages, norms. That normal is just whatever you grew up with. I think about the guy in Vienna who wanted street signs in English, or the woman in Spain who thought siestas were inefficient, or the tourist in Amsterdam who didn't understand why Dutch was on a Dutch museum exhibit about a Dutch girl who wrote in Dutch. It's funny, but it's also kind of fascinating, because these moments show how deeply we're shaped by where we come from, and how hard it is to step outside that bubble, even when you're literally standing in another country. I've heard hundreds of these stories, from friends, coworkers, random people online, and honestly, they never stop coming. Every week, someone sends me a new one. You won't believe what I just saw. Guess what an American tourist asked me today? And the thing is, I always believe it. Because at this point, I've heard it all. Well, almost all. I'm sure there's a new story happening somewhere right now. Maybe someone's asking why the Eiffel Tower doesn't have an elevator that goes to the top. It does. Maybe someone's confused about why Iceland isn't covered in ice. Greenland is the icy one. Maybe someone's wondering why Big Ben isn't actually that big. Who knows? But I'll probably hear about it eventually. Because of these stories, they're endless. And honestly, I kind of